T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kush's Corner here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Tonight, I am joined once again by Mr. Alex Myers, and kind of a part two, a continuation of a show we did, I believe, a little over a year ago, where we kind of talked about the tools of the trade, our favorite tools for herpetoculture, be that enclosures, incubators, hooks, tongs, cleaning supplies, whatever, water bowls, getting into a lot of that stuff. A lot of what we've learned over the years kind of maximizes this thing we call herpetoculture. We will obviously talk about more stuff than just that, obviously get into some of our breeding seasons, whatever it may be. Before we get into that, of course, though, as always, USARK. So USARK is the organization that is fighting for our rights to keep our reptiles, to run our reptile businesses, and to live this lifestyle. Check out usark.org for everything you need to know about the organization. That website is where you can find alerts to new pieces of legislation introduced either at the national level or at local levels, and as well as you can find updates on any pieces of legislation. usark.org is also where you can become a member of the organization. As a community, we have strength in numbers, and the more people that are behind the cause, the better. And here we are. Thank you to everybody who is listening, either live or after the fact. If you are here on YouTube and you are not already, please subscribe to the channel. A new podcast comes out every single day of the week here on the Trap Talk Reptile Network from some of the best hosts in the industry, talking about a wide variety of reptile-related topics. So if you are a reptile podcast fan, you have come to the right place. But if you are more of an audio person like myself, we are on all of the major audio platforms, be that Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the Trap Talk Reptile Network. A follow and a 5-star review on those platforms would be most appreciated. And if you want to support everything that I have going on, get inside scoops to breeding, first access to animals, patreon.com/CushReptile is the place to go. Half of all membership fees immediately become credit towards the acquisition of an animal, and that credit never expires. So would appreciate it greatly if you guys could check that out. With all the housekeeping out of the way, let's bring Alex onto the show. What's going on, dude? Thank you for being back, and thank you for kind of making this happen very last minute for me.
It's all good. I appreciate it. And you know me, I always happy to just have an evening to talk reptiles and everything about them.
Yep, absolutely. Man, well, I guess, it was about 8 episodes ago. So about 2 months ago was the last time you were here for the 2-year anniversary show.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I realized it was episode 107. I was like, yeah, like episode, was it 101 or like
99?
What? Yeah, 99 maybe. Okay,
maybe 101. I forget, but it was one of those two. It wasn't 100. I know that much.
Gotcha, but it was up there, and
I think it actually was 101. Now that you mentioned it, yeah. So it's like 6.
Okay, I'm just literally seeing what I can recall at the top, but yeah, I mean, it's just been 2 years of great episodes, great content. Pretty sure I said that during the 2-year anniversary as well. But I mean, I still distinctly remember you calling me when you were getting ready to start your podcast. And I want to say it was the first Wednesday after I moved up to my new place that we did the first episode. So it was like just weird. I still remember that because I had like my first day of work or something the week before that. And obviously, a lot's happened in 2 years between your breeding collection, my breeding collection, and just sort of what we've been doing in the hobby. And I appreciate you having me on to keep talking reptiles and reptile, I guess, tools for this segment. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, man, it's kind of crazy, like just how much has happened since this show has started. It's been over 2 years now, and I mean, the fact that I'm over 100 episodes alone seems insane. Like that. Yeah, I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. So,
but in a way, and we've talked about this off I guess podcast, but I mean, it's just contributing to a massive digital archive of information that people can continuously reference. I mean, obviously in your case with the scrub pythons, it's probably not out of the question to say that as far as like between your personal YouTube page and then just the hours of conversation on, your podcast, that it's one of the larger, digital databases for all things Cymalia and captivity. I'm sure there's plenty of like literature and stuff. I think I've got volume 2 of Derouge's book on my bookshelf. That's the Reptiles of the Indo-Australian Archipelago, and I want to say volume 2 encompasses snakes. So I think maybe there's some Moralia amethystina records in that, but even then it's a lot of mystery to those snakes that you love so much. And I've had a lot of fun with listening to you talk about them. And I mean, even back when we were working together, gosh, what was that internship was now 5 years ago, like just hands on with all your scrubs back then. I'm not a snake guy, but I can really appreciate like what goes into it. And just sort of, being able to live vicariously through your work with the species, as well as others who are just as passionate. And at the end of the day, just making sure information stays around online, since that's just sort of the way the world's going. But at the same time, making sure that there's credible information out there, or at least even experienced information. I mean, I know I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, but
I mean, I feel like as long as the tone of it is like, this is what I think or I know now, what can you really say? Because if that information changes in the future, if you come to a different understanding, you just say, hey, I decided that I'm gonna think about it this way now. If you're not dogmatic about it, then man, if someone wants to complain about somebody being like, hey, this is what I think, then I don't know, you gotta take a look at yourself. You can present new information for sure, but as attacking somebody personally just for speaking their mind, like, no. Not for me, man. I don't, that type of stuff does not interest me in the slightest. So
not what this network stands on, right? Learning and growing and sharing information. So that's what I'm here to do tonight.
No doubt about it. So I mean, man, it's only been 6 weeks or so, but what's anything new going on with you since we talked last on here?
First clutch of water dragon eggs from like my weird midwinter laying thing. Yep. They hatched, so that was really exciting.
Sweet.
And then I'm still just sort of waiting on the other eggs from that to hatch. And now that spring is pretty much up here by me. We're starting to get, spring for us is days.
Into the 30s maybe?
Yeah, above freezing, like 38 to 50, if you will. But it's sunny. The days are a lot longer. So like a sunny, like we're already at like 13-hour daylight. So it's when that sun, I've probably said it on episodes in the past, my lizard room has a west-facing wall. Mm-hmm. And so when the sun hits that, I mean, that really helps stabilize that high ambient temperature for the lizards. So. And they're picking up on that, longer. I mean, I was in the room just checking everything before we started this podcast. I mean, my ambient air temperature was 91 today. So, yeah, it's toasty in there, and sailfins are still basking. Water dragons are running around. So they know that it's time for the I guess dry, rainy season. However, I guess that was totally opposite. It's the hottest time of the year now, and it's when they got to start laying eggs. So I guess that would correlate with the dry season, and maybe that's how it works for them. Because if I'm still trying to sort of figure out, I don't mimic 60 inches of rainfall and 6 months for them, but if I had to guess, the lizards lay their eggs in the dry season, so the babies hatch in the wet season. Yeah. And I have a feeling, because of the amount of snowfall or rain we get in our Minnesota fall, and then the crazy snow through the winter, they're just constantly exposed to those low pressure systems, and they assume it's the rainy season and it's cooler and it's just not time to do breeding. So
yeah, makes sense.
Other than the water dragon eggs hatching, I did have one clutch laid, and it looks like there's a couple other girls that are truly now going to cycle appropriately. Personally, I'm just a little bit worried about that, because I don't want them to just, at least with the water dragons, they will multi-clutch no problem.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, and Brian Waterloo talked about this with lace, and with a lot of lizards, is that I don't want to burn them out because they've technically already laid. Some of these girls have laid twice, with eggs at the end of December and then the middle of January. Yeah. So now, one girl, she just laid her third clutch. Another one's due to lay her third, because she looks gravid. I typically would much rather have like 5 clutches spread out from January to August, and then they should have not laid at all. And I had eggs laid in October last year as well because we had another warm spike, and that kicked them into gear. So ideally I'd rather have like 5 clutches over 8 months than 5 to possibly 6 or 7 clutches within an 8 to 9 month period. I just don't think that's going to be good for them. So it's just sort of a weird balance that I'm trying to find, because now with the room being hotter, them being a cold-blooded animal, if that room's 90 degrees and the grow tents they're in are sometimes 91, maybe still cooler on the bottom, their metabolic rate is still higher. So if I try to cut them off of food to prevent them from cycling, now they have no food and they're sitting in a really hot room, and they're just going to start eating away at their fat. The metabolic rate is at peak operating temperature. So I'm trying to think of some things. I'm hesitant to, remove the male, because then I don't want them laying slugs and possibly hard time. So I'm kind of conflicted.
It seems like your girls are cycling no matter what. It doesn't matter. I'm genuinely not even trying right now. I was really hoping on making sure they had a good winter to go through, and that winter is pretty much over now. So I'm trying to figure it out. If they choose to cycle, I'm going to let them do it. Something I've thought about doing is maybe not feeding them as heavily after they lay, just because I know that can trigger them to go into a cycle. Create distance between clutches, essentially.
It does do that sometimes, and that's the other problem. It's like, what's the point? I can get eggs 35 days apart, or I can get them 74 to 90 days apart. Either way, I'm getting eggs, and it just comes down to whether or not I choose to spoil the females after they lay to replenish their stores. So,
is there any literature about wild individuals on how many times a year females are laying eggs?
Probably not. I have read is that eggs in Vietnam, the eggs are eaten as a local delicacy. So eggs are collected in the dry season. So I know they breed in the dry season. As far as the exact fecundity of wild females, I have not been able to find any literature on that. And it's clear in captivity, they are just cranking eggs out. But
it begs the question on the other side, though, is like, is that what they're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Are they supposed to turn and burn, to kind of, it's a little bit of a crass term, but like, are they, because, there are reptiles that.
Yeah, well, and a water dragon is lower on the trophic level too, right? That idea of
they're meant to mature young, produce a shit ton of babies over a shorter period of time, and then no longer be reproductive. Look at Odatria, a lot of colubrids, like tricolor hognose in general, particularly tricolors. They'll lay a ton. Trinket rats, that whole I'm not even gonna try. I can see the word. I'm not gonna try to pronounce it. Colionaphus or whatever genus, the trinket rats.
Colionaphus. Yeah. Copper rat snakes too.
Yeah.
Silhouette.
Yes, indeed. They produce a lot. So, and Barron's racers are another one that like they'll lay 3 clutches in a year. So inevitably that is not going to be an animal doing that they're not going to do that for 10, 15 years. It's just not how that's going to go. Do you think that that's maybe what the deal is with these water dragons?
It very well could be. I even got in January, my original female cycled and laid a clutch. They were bad, but that was a 13-year-old.
That was my next question. Was like, how long was her reproductive life?
The last time she laid eggs for me was 2023. So.
And when was the first time?
2018.
So that's 5, 6 seasons. That's it's not terrible, but like, there's some monitors that'll probably lay eggs for 15 years or something like that. some of the bigger species, I think.
So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. It's just yeah, they're very productive, and like I said, anyway, it's sort of making me have to rethink like the holdback situation, where if they truly, I mean, because like I've got Bert Langerworf's book on water dragons, but he was predominantly working with Australian water dragons, so they fully winter.
They're probably far more seasonal than the
way more. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But even Bert was stating that the Australian water dragons, typically their reproductive rate slowed after the females hit 10 years of age, which would ring true with this original female of mine, because I got her in 2013, and her last, good year of breeding back to back was 2023. And now we are coming up on, like, I guess 2.5 years after, or no, 3.5 years after, 2.5 years after 2023. And she finally just decided to cycle a clutch. So, it's more notes for the notebook. And I mean, technically this will be my 8th year breeding water dragons since 18, 19. It's since 2018, and it shows you how I'm still, like, there's stuff I don't know, and like I can tell you on average, like, how eggs hatch, how the frequency between layings, but at the same time, it's just, it's that long, this is data that you don't see unless you've kept a species for, coming up on 10 years now for me, actually over 10 years now for me. So, it's still have a lot to learn, a lot to figure out, but I'm just, my instincts is I don't want to lose these animals because they're overproducing, but at the same time, they're doing it. Like, I'm not even trying to get some of these girls to breed anymore. I've been arguably just been maintenance feeding them, and they're still building up these fat stores and getting enough calories that they're choosing to cycle. So we'll see what happens, but all the babies that hatched are healthy, and they're rocking. So they should be, a few of them should be up for sale in a couple weeks. So I try and let them go right at around a month old. I used to hold them back longer, but then I was working on like sort of a new diet with like rotating feeder items and like really trying to work on gut loading. And the rate at which they grow is pretty awesome. And so they're a lot bigger. They just look more proportional, which is a conversation we've had in the past when you were raising up those scrub pythons that were sort of like stunted and they were maintenance fed. And so I was almost wondering if like my dietary regimen for the babies of, sort of doing crickets and now switching more to roaches and the microworms that I've been breeding, like a really good, sturdy, meatier prey item that just seems to be higher in protein, and then they pack on size, and in my opinion, what seems to be a much healthier growth rate for lizard. And if I can get them bigger at a month as opposed to 2 months, then they're ready to go. Lizards are weird. We don't really go off of kind of like snakes where it's 3 to 5, maybe chondros, 15, 20, 30 meals or whatever. I kind of just watch the size, get them past that fragile hatching stage. And as soon as they're eating food on their own, they're good to go. I may have said it on a previous episode. I remember I sold a water dragon to somebody who was like a fish keeper, but he wanted to do like a paludarium setup. And this was a water dragon I had raised that had never at all eaten crickets. And he ended up doing like an unboxing video, so I watched it. And this lizard, I ship all of mine in shipping bags. He opens the bag, the lizard pops its head out. So this thing hasn't even been in the enclosure for more than 30 seconds. And he puts a cricket on tongs in front of it, and it eats it while it's still in the bag. As it's that's what I'm saying. Just getting them strong and healthy and acclimated, and they're ready to go. And ironically, here we are now. This year, I had a customer that bought one of my last ones available. They received it a couple weeks ago, and they told me the same thing. They put it in the setup, they threw some crickets in it, and it just gobbled 2 of them up right in front of them within minutes of being unboxed. So, small little details like that I'm refining post getting eggs, right? Like really trying to raise good pet quality water dragons that are just able to take on the world and, let people enjoy keeping water dragons for the amazing animals they are.
Yeah.
So
for sure. I mean, with them, I've never kept water dragons, but I'd have to imagine that the concern isn't whether or not the babies will eat. It's just like, how much will they eat right away, right? I can't imagine they're too hard to get going.
No. And the micro worms for me have been a game changer because they can't climb the ceramic bowls. Crickets will sometimes hop out, and roaches work, but sometimes at dubia, like they just stop moving.
Yeah.
And the water dragons are more site-based. So when you've got like just a withering bowl of worms and they see that, they pick up on it, and they eat no problem. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And get some big fast. And like I said, especially them being captive bred, it is a field day compared to, I mean, I'm thinking about some of the wild caught adults that I still have that won't eat in front of me. And yet their babies, on the other hand, right? You know, I catch the mom looking thin. I'm like, time to check for eggs. And those babies are F1s, and they'll eat in front of me. They run out onto my hands, and I can pick them up, and they're great. Really rewarding lizards to keep. And seems like people, now that they realize they're not coming in wild caught anymore, the appreciation and willingness to pay captive bred prices for them is actually coming to fruition.
That's good. That's very good. Yeah, that I feel like that's one of the most gratifying parts of working with a species that was historically just, I don't want to say like a cheap import.
They were. You don't have to say it like that.
Quite literally, you know, I mean, and, you know, with the water dragons for sure. But then if you look back a little further, like with the scrub pythons, it's the same way. But where you start to get your captive generations going, and then some of those quirks and issues that you experience dealing with wild caughts just kind of not even slowly, kind of quickly disappear. And I'm like, wow, this is a whole heck of a lot better. I mean, for me at this point, I'd have to count, but I know my collection of scrubs is well over half captive bred, most that I produced. And I just don't really deal with some of the same issues that I used to, of like animals that would be real ornery, or like you said, not wanting to eat in front of you, or you know, like with the scrubs in particular, like, you know, they have a bad reputation for their demeanor. But I think for me, the thing that was more annoying was sometimes them spewing out the back end when they get touched the wrong way. I rarely ever have to deal with that anymore, which is amazing.
Must be nice.
Yeah, for sure. No, but like, for instance, one of your personal favorites from back in the day, the big male Wamina, you know, wild caught snake, but fantastic. And he was never the most docile individual, but not
touchy.
Yeah, but never like, he got to a point where it was manageable. And, you know, I've had him paired up, and for some reason over the last few weeks, he's just like, I fucking hate you now, to me. And the female's cage, you remember my 6x2x30s,
yeah,
she's in a top cage. So
Godspeed.
This super angry, almost 12-foot male scrub, his head is like that. I'm just like, dude, I haven't had to do this in so long. Like, these snakes are just not that poorly behaved. And I'm like, why are you in a top cage right now? This is some bullshit. So he's back in his cage now, which is a bottom cage, which is a much better place to work an individual that's that upset. But yeah, that was pretty funny to me. I'm like, I'm you know, having to grab a second hook, and I'm like, I haven't had to do this in a long time. What's your problem right now? So,
yeah, I want to say the mini fridge I had in that room, it's now beer fridge, but I believe there's still like faint traces of some scrub spray of the urate that I couldn't get off.
Oh no.
So it's just permanently engraved there. It's probably like from one of the Highland. I got, you know, who knows how many scrubs dripped in that room, but I still see it, and I'm like, no one knows.
Oh man. Yeah.
So the amethystema cooler, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that's, man, what's nice about the captive bred ones, that even if any of them have, you know, had a little bit of an attitude, they don't really do that spray as much as the wild caught ones do. So I mean, hardly ever. So I'm like, hey, I'll take it, man. I'll take it. That's fine by me.
Yeah.
So, yep. Well, anything else preliminarily before we get into the discussion topic of the evening, sir?
Nothing from me. I'm sure probably the folks who tune in, I should probably give some updates on what's going on in the scrub shepherd's pasture. I don't know. That was a plan there. People got to hear from
/ Kush Reptile for all of your inside scoops as to what's going on.
You're gonna make them pay for Patreon?
I'm not making anyone do anything. I'm just saying they can if they want to. And shout out to all the Patreon members. Definitely got a cool little community growing over there. So I'm very much appreciative of everybody who is involved. Marcus, who's in the chat right now, is part of the Patreon. What's going on, Marcus? So yeah, I guess, with keeping with my tradition of I don't say anything about what's going on until there's babies in hand publicly. And Patreon does not count as publicly, so it's still in line with the rule. I guess what I'll just say is, today last year versus today this year, everything is a lot better. And I don't think I told you, but after the show, I'll tell you a couple of very important updates as of today, in fact. So, yeah. Very exciting stuff going on, but I just hope for a really nice variety of, scrubs, colubrids, and then also venomous this year. So, and based on how things are looking now, I should be able to at least, accomplish that goal of having a nice spread of production from within the collection. So, but I've you had to just shoot for the moon. No, unfortunately, Tim, no Biak eggs. My female developed follicles so big you could see them without even palpating her and reabsorb them. So no Biaks this year, but I don't know, maybe next year. It'll happen eventually. That's like the Moluccans. It'll happen eventually, I guess. But oh man. Anyway, but yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was just reducing some of the side projects and like this, scrubs, spilotes, pituophis, crotalis being like, that's it, locked in. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, literally, aside from those categories, I got my olive pythons, my mangrove, 2 pairs of mangrove snakes, my blue beauties, Honduran palm vipers, mangshans. So 6 pairs. I guess the Honduran palms are a trio, but of snakes that don't fit into those categories. So I guess that's good. But everything is a lot more streamlined, more simple for me, and just from a mental standpoint too, it's a lot easier to kind of, keep everything kind of very like regimented. I'm a schedule guy. I can't, it's just who I am. It's how I operate. Last week with Josh Alder, he was saying how he doesn't feed on a schedule, and I give a lot of credit to people who can operate like that. Not me, man. I got to have my feeding day of the week. And if you don't think that's good, do it with your own collection. So I don't know what to tell you. Everybody looks all right. Is it supernatural? Yeah, of course not. But we're keeping snakes in captivity too. That's not natural either. So, so yeah, did the Biak scrub reabsorb after a shed? I mean, yeah, it seems kind of like what'll happen is that whatever goes on in their body will, they'll reabsorb, they'll start that process, and then they'll shed. Scrubs get dark when they are late into their follicular development, and then into their past their ovulation. When they reabsorb their follicles, that next shed they lighten back up entirely or mostly. And you'll be able to, you know, for anyone who palpates their females, very, very obvious that the follicles are still there and they're not eggs. And another sign that I've kind of found over the years is that the follicles will start to physically separate a little bit. So you'll just like bump, space, instead of like bump, 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 bump in sequence. So that is a little palpating tip for you guys. Trick of the trade. I use my left hand. These fingers, trick of the trade. Who needs an ultrasound when you have your thumb and your index finger? So that actually might be a kind of cool place to start, man. The art of palpation is well underutilized in snake breeding, in my personal opinion. What do you say?
I suck at it. I at my old job, I tried palpating Boyega, and
okay,
I mean
that's a different, you know.
Yeah, I was able to do it with the ball pythons, and again, though, it was one of those where I had some of those cases where I could feel follicles.
Yeah.
I'd feed the ball pythons, I'd feed them, and then I'd pair, they would lock, and then she would reabsorb. And I have no idea what I did. I'm wondering if maybe I should have kept feeding to trigger her dog, but it's just, I don't know, it's tough with ball pythons because some of them are just so used to eating every week. It's like, do you try fasting them the way most people, and I don't know, it's, I won't lie, especially with like the stuff I have, like the sail fins, you know, I can't touch them and palpate them, but they're lean enough that I can kind of see when they swell.
Yeah, sure.
And that's sort of when I've had luck trying to like, I'll see a female, I'm like, you look swollen. Or sometimes, you know, I'm fairly regimented with my adult sail fins, and they're fed every other day. They'll do like a salad and then pause, protein, pause, salad. And there'll be some days where, you know, they always want the protein and then they don't eat the protein. And if they don't eat it and they look swollen, I throw them in with the male. And usually, at least last year and so far with this year, they lock right away for a while. So granted, you know, that's lizards. I'm yet to truly, I guess, keep any pythons or anything like that personally, where I could practice palpating. But I don't know, I've sort of always just tried to eyeball stuff. You know, at my former job with all the colubrids, just, you know, when those females wake up and it's like 2 weeks of feeding them twice a week, you can just see that lower third of like a milk snake or a corn snake. It just looks full. It's not like swollen, but it's noticeably full, and that's where it's, you know, you pair them and they're locked instantly. I found that actually especially helpful with some of the king snakes because I was worried that she might try to eat him. So it's like, okay, if she's eating, but she also looks full there, maybe that means she's resetting.
And that's a very important point with, and, you know, kind of a little bit of a callback to my episode with Patrick from a few weeks ago. We talked about mangrove breeding for a while, and he's like, palpate. Like, how do you know when to pair this cannibalistic species? Well, when she has follicles, that's when you do it. So I've had a hell of a time attempting to palpate my melanota female a couple of weeks ago, and she had nothing in her, but my gosh, it took me probably 10 minutes to even be able to get close enough to her to do it.
Oh man.
And I just was looking at her, I'm like, there's no way you have anything in there right now, and she did not. So but yeah, I mean, I got very lucky that one of my early mentors, Josh Beatty, who was a ball python guy back in Chicago, he was very good at palpating, and like, he probably had me palpate my first ball python. I was probably like 12 years old. So, you know, that was like, all right, that's a good, you know, good thing to learn. And like, I remember the first time, the first time he had me do it, I palpated both a female with follicles and a female with eggs. So I got to feel the difference, and it's like it's shockingly different. I mean, you know, and it makes sense, but like the follicles feel like marbles. They're very hard, they're very circular, and then the eggs, they feel like they're eggs. You know, they're egg shaped, they're soft, and you kind of like kind of like glide over them, as opposed to the follicles that are bump, 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 bump. So yeah, Emmy threw a comment in the chat about him trying to palpate a couple of my scrubs. Yeah, it definitely takes a minute. And what I would say to anybody out there, squeeze harder than you think you need to, and it's not going to hurt them. I think that's the biggest problem is people will kind of like they'll grab the snake and they won't put much pressure, because if you think about it, those follicles are like the spine, and especially when they're small, that's where they sit. So you got to kind of get up there to be able to feel them at all. Also, like after the snake has a bowel movement, perfect time, because especially for somebody who's newer to palpating, and once you know what you're feeling for, it's like pretty obvious. But like a bunch of urates can kind of feel like some follicles if you don't really know what you're feeling for. But you kind of hear like some gurgling sounds and stuff like that. You know, you can hear the whole digestive process kind of take. So, you know, it's definitely a trick that takes a while to get right. But once you do, and the thing is, the principle of it applies to all snakes. So it's not like you need to, you know, okay, the follicular progression of this species, I got to learn no, it's all essentially the same. You know, by the time they reach about that 8 millimeter size, that's when they're going to become receptive. You know, past 30 millimeters is when you're going to start to get, you know, the ovulation. And, you know, I don't think it's exactly the same for all snakes, but, you know, the person who told me that pretty much you're going to get universally all the same stuff was Mr. Brian Barczyk. And if anybody has bred a lot of species of snakes, it's that guy. So I definitely trusted that opinion. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't recommend it highly enough for any breeder. I say all this to say that the Python King, the god himself, the goat, Ryan Young, does not palpate at any snake whatsoever. But you know, the thing about him though, he looks at his snake and they're just like, okay, yes, sir, I will breed for you. So we don't get that luxury over here, unfortunately. We're not at that goat status. So
I wouldn't know. I don't keep pythons.
Yeah. But yeah, jokes aside, definitely for anybody with really any snakes at all, but especially anything that you're not super sure about, still learning how to breed them. It just gives you a clear picture of where you are. And then from there, you can learn some of the visual signs that come along with it. All right, I know my female's follicles are this big. Here's what her behavior is looking like. Here's how swollen she looks just sitting there. And then after a while, you know, you probably don't need to palpate quite as much. I try not to do it a lot because obviously it's a pretty invasive process. You know, you're pulling the animal out, you're messing with it. If you're doing that all the time, I mean, the palpating itself, I don't feel like is too stressful of an event. It's one thing if you like keep pulling them back over and over again, or you know, but if you're just like running the animal back into its enclosure, you know, palpating real quick, I can't imagine that's too stressful of an ordeal for that snake. They don't react adversely necessarily. They don't turn around. They don't. I mean, sometimes they'll tense up, but they'll only do that if they're tense to begin with. And then, you know, palpating a tense snake is challenging for sure. But you know, kind of a lot of benefits to be had from learning that skill. So I'm pretty sure Justin Kabelka had a really good video back in the day about palpating ball pythons, like probably like a decade ago. So yeah, and then the ultrasound, that's a whole other level to it. But then, you know, I've ultrasounded snakes and I'm certain I left the experience more confused than when I got there. If you don't know what you're looking for, it can be challenging, definitely more challenging than palpating. But then if you're good at it, then it's like, okay, here's a literal picture of the snake's follicles, and you can measure it with the ultrasound. So like, it's obviously a much more scientific, precise, exact tool. I wouldn't necessarily discourage anybody from ultrasounding, but it's a whole heck of a lot more expensive than bump, 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 bump. So, that alone for me is enough to be like, yeah, I'll stick with this one. But no shade to anybody with an ultrasound or who utilizes one. Some of the most successful breeders in the history of our industry have been ultrasound maniacs. So is that? Do you have anything to add, Alex?
Yeah, as the guy who, I'd say, I could try palpating my colubrids I have, but the problem is they're all male. So I don't think that's going to work. But I guess the newest one is a female, actually. That's in quarantine. But
here you go.
I am, we'll wait and see. She's a long way out from that. But like I said, I can't really comment because it's a skill I personally am not confident in. There were some snakes, like I said, when I was doing ball pythons at the pet shop, I had a pretty rough idea, but I had tried it with like retics at my previous, the locality cross, super dwarfs, whatever you want to call them. I had tried that and I couldn't tell, honestly. It was tough. But I did see behavior changes sometimes when I thought I felt bumps. It's just wasn't sure what I was looking for truly. So
the one last thing I'll say before we move on, whether you're putting the animal back into a cage or into a tub for palpating, bring the body mass of the snake lower than wherever the point is of contact with the enclosure. Because like if you're putting a snake down into a tub and trying to palpate, all of these muscles will be tense because it's holding the weight up from there. So if you, I don't know, it's so funny. If you move the snake's body down to where that like balance point at the edge of the tub or the edge of the cage is where the weight is being bared, and that's where the muscular tension is occurring, then down lower in the body will be more relaxed by that very nature. They'll kind of encourage the movement of the snake in as opposed to potentially coming back around if you're going down into a cage or down into a tub, and then your ability to feel those follicles will be much easier. So tip for follicles. Okay. So let's hit your list. What do you got? What's our first topic, Alex?
Oh yeah, my wonderful list. Yeah. So as said, tonight's episode, we're sort of doing volume two of our favorite tools of the trades, husbandry equipment, just sort of husbandry techniques, ways that you and I sort of can compare and contrast, bounce ideas off of each other. So something that I've kind of been doing lately, and I know it's talked a lot about, but I guess sort of, I'd like to say how I sort of do things and hear how you do things, is just multiples of your equipment based on what you have. So in my case, right, I don't have as large of a collection as you do, but even though I have one lizard room, like I've got 3 sets of hemostats for my respective groups. And so, that's just something I figured I'd dive in, sort of talk about why I do it this way. Maybe as I'm saying something, you might find some cons or something that I'm totally missing on, and vice versa. But I guess if you don't mind me starting off on this, the main thing for me is that I remember I had heard MJ talk about something where he had like a set of forceps for every single snake he had. I'm not going to lie, I'm not that extreme because logically I've got some lizards that as soon as I put that female in with the male, well, she's now in a cage that 3 other females in the room have also been in.
Right.
And, it's not like I can keep sail fins on newspaper with a little ceramic water bowl either, right? Like I can hose those cages down as much as I want. I could take the lizards out and spray permethrin or something just to kill anything in the driftwood. But at the end of the day, there's a good chance there's bacteria or something on there that some level of cross-contamination is going to happen. I'm totally going to acknowledge that, right? That's just the reality of how my room currently works.
Yeah.
And so sort of because of that, I have like a set of forceps for all my Philippine sailfins. Why? Because I have 1 male and 3 females. So at one point or another, those girls are all going to be in the same cage with the male, like the breeding cage is what I call it, and then I can isolate the females. At the same time, that pair of hemostats for the Philippines never ever touches my celebensis hemostats. And I sort of call that my wild caught set of hemostats, if you will, because my celebensis pair had also been raised up with a microlophus sailfin that is also in the room. So even though the microlophus sailfin is separate, right, those animals were in contact with each other at one point. So I just simply then follow an order of operations of whoever I had the longest, they get fed first if I choose to feed via hemostats.
Yeah.
And then I have another similar regimen with my water dragons, right? I've got two pairs, one for group A, one for group C. I had a group B, and then sadly I lost that male last year. So stuff got consolidated. And so the group A male and the group C male have more ladies this year. So I don't think they're complaining. But once again, that idea of, each group has their own respective feeding forceps, and then those groups are worked with in an order of operations. So it's sort of a way I can try and avoid cross-contamination. I don't know of any salivary diseases that are spread amongst these lizards, but if there's going to be a point of, disease, hypothetical disease transmission, knock on wood that I haven't had anything happen to my lizards, it's going to be where, an animal takes a roach off of tongs and leaves a little bit of saliva, and then the other one bites on the tongs. And so, again, that's primarily, though, only if I'm feeding larger prey items like tilapia or shrimp. Typically, though, for the most part, and it's a blessing and a curse, I've been trying to be more diligent about just feeding my lizards out of dishes or salads on plates.
Okay.
Because that way, each, like a paper plate, right? Like a disposable paper plate, I can compost that after. So that way the lizard eats off of it. If it gets its saliva or germs, whatever, that's folded and thrown out. There's no mixing of bowls. Even if I did my best to, simple green or whatever and sanitize reusable bowl, there's just a point where, selfishly, especially during baby season with, the amount of sailfins I have, it's so much easier for me to take like a paper plate and cut it up into 12 little sections.
Yeah.
And it's got these 12, pizza slice shaped salad plates for baby sailfins and no worry of cross contamination. And the same sort of applies for the water dragons, because since I keep the water dragons in groups, if I'm feeding with tongs, it's not uncommon where the alpha female of group A and another female see that food item and they go to bite that. And now they've got two mouths on a set of hemostats. Whereas if I've just got a giant bowl full of bugs, that lizard's tongue is grabbing the bug that it wants. And then they move their head back up and another one goes down and grabs a bug. And so just trying to sort of eliminate mixing. Again, at the end of the day, a lot of these lizards are either living in pairs or they're rotating in and out of habitats where they've kind of just been with, the same territory of one. But it's just something, maybe a small step to prevent, what if I had one set of hemostats for the entire room, right? Who knows what a water dragon could give a sailfin? I don't know. I personally don't want to know. So why risk it, right?
Yeah.
Is it perfect? Maybe not, but it's just something that has been on my mind as I've grown this collection and really thought like, man, what if I only had one set of hemostats and every lizard in the room was just slobbering on it? If I decided to take like a weekend day where I'm hand feeding, with the hemostats. It could be a recipe for disaster. I don't know of any causes like that, but you hear a lot of concern about that from people who keep snakes. And
yeah, sure.
Sort of my own experience in that case, I drop fed everything at my old job when I was overseeing a colubrid collection like that. Because it's just so much easier, and it's not worth a snake biting hemostats and then I go to feed another snake. So sort of, I don't know. How do you use hemostats? You have multiple sets, right? That's sort of how I'm doing it. But for more of the snake people listening, what's your sort of protocol regimen?
Yeah. So I have 5 sets of hemostats. Man, they get used. They go through the dishwasher. That's kind of what I do. And when it comes to, because I have kind of multiple uses for these hemostats. Obviously feeding for one, but then also for maintenance on the venomous, I use them. And in the past, when I had my animals somewhere without access to a dishwasher, definitely approach this differently, where I kind of had like pet sets for rooms and stuff like that, and I'd try to wash them before uses, whatever. But obviously you're not going to get the heat from a in a dishwasher that you're going to get hand washing something. That's it, that sanitization. So now, yeah, if I use a pair of hemostats, I just put them through the dishwasher, just straight up. And then when it comes to feeding, I kind of do have an order, with the way that I do my order of operations with cleaning. Rarely, if ever, am I taking care of an animal that I didn't produce before I'm taking care of an animal that I did produce. I guess up until the point of those animals being breeders. So where they may be mixing with wild caughts or going to females that have been with wild caught males in the past, once you reach the point of animals being breeders, you kind of there's an acceptance of quarantine, cross-contamination. It's not perfect anymore, and it can't be. What the difference is, it's like that's one animal, so to speak. It's breeders and non-breeders now, where you have that potential for cross-contamination. I don't want to say you assume your breeders are dirty or have something or whatever, but you move forward under the assumption that there could be. So you don't want to do that and then go back to your offspring you've produced or you're raising or whatever. So kind of what I do is, if I'm, get a clean set of hemostats, I'll feed a bunch of snakes that I produced, kind of in order of youngest to oldest. And then as soon as they cross into a group of animals that I'm like, I acquired from elsewhere or are further down my order of operations, those tongs don't come back down that hierarchy. They keep going until, depending on who I fed and what, they'll go to quarantine or whatever they may be. They'll go to my one mitochondro who's isolated in my bedroom, and I'll feed him with those at the end of the night when I'm on my last animal to feed, or, whatever it may be. And then if, depending on, I'm thawing a bunch of different sizes. Okay, I fed all the mice that thawed earlier in the day. Now, like, my medium rats are ready later in the day, but I'm moving back down the order of operations. I grab a new pair of hemostats, and 5 is enough. So that's what I do. Knock on PVC. Never had any issues arise from this. So, but I think also I'm at the point where I rarely bring a new animal into the collection. I have four snakes in quarantine right now, and 3 of them have been in there for well over 6 months. So I don't, and I don't really intend on, at least in this setting, in this house, the way that I'm doing things, bringing in a whole lot of new animals. I just want to grow from the inside, grow from holdbacks, from breeding. And then obviously those are the most clean, pristine animals that you can, especially if they came out of eggs, that you can get. So that's kind of the shift of the mindset now. But with that said, you still got to be, if your entire collection was 100% produced by you and none of those animals ever saw any sort of outside animals, then I guess you can operate kind of in a bubble. You can, but unless your name is Ed Marino, I don't think anyone's doing that. So, that'd be awesome one day, I guess, but definitely not going to happen in the near future. So that's what I do. It seems to work really well. Obviously, if something gets on the tongs, if a snake really bites them or something like that, I have my Clorox wipes I'll use to do a quick wipe down and then move on. If it's really bad, I'll just go to a new set of tongs. I'm quick to go to the new set because I have multiple for that exact reason. If there's ever a moment I'm like, I really shouldn't transfer these over to this other area, just don't. So that is that with the tongs. So similar, a little bit different, but I guess the main difference is the just throwing them in the dishwasher.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that. I have a dishwasher too. I guess for me, I'm just, I use that for myself. So I guess maybe I can, like, on a dishwasher day.
Every load of dishes for me is a mixed load.
Okay. Well, at least you're not concerned about your biosecurity. Yeah.
I'm bolstering my gut microbiome.
Yeah.
With microdoses of reptile shit.
Nice. Yeah. Well, at least you don't have lizards, so you won't have pinworms, hopefully.
We'll see.
I can't comment on that one, but yeah, maybe I'll give that a shot. Then next time I run the dishwasher, I'll just throw them. Yeah, because you've just got the stainless steel hemostats, right?
Right. The ones that have the coating, like the paint on it or whatever, put them through the dishwasher, they chip immediately.
Okay.
They look better. I don't like them. Stainless steel all the way through.
Cool.
I mean, shoot, I've had some stainless steel hemostats for most certainly 15 years now. And
they're just as good as the day you bought them.
Yeah, maybe like the slightest bit of rust here and there, but like that was actually something I wanted to talk about. You had some kind of more large items on the list, but I'm like, let's talk about like feeding tongs and stuff. Since we're here, man, I'm an 18-inch stainless steel non-locking hemostat guy every day of the week.
I say 24.
I don't like that they don't grip as well.
Oh well, I guess maybe. I mean, I'm just usually feeding big roaches or big pieces of tilapia and shrimp. Like I get the jumbo shrimp, so they grab.
I have a pair of 24s, and really the only time I use them is for feeding my Mangshans and my cohabbed palm vipers. Mm-hmm. Even just individual palm viper, they have strike ranges on them, and I kind of sometimes have to reach into the enclosure to get near them. But like with the scrubs, especially like, a large rat, a jumbo rat, I just don't like how flimsy like grabbing a jumbo rat with 24s are. But the 18s are great. But obviously you're that much closer to the snake, but I got a perfect record so far. So I'll take that little bit of extra control over that extra 6 inches of space between me and the snake. If you're super concerned about that, you can use the Midwest grabber tongs. And I have a pair of those that I really kind of, at this point, only use for Mangshan dealings. So that's really about it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, especially in my case, like I've got some of my hemostats are only about a foot long. And so for my sail fins that are like gray with, ironically, of course, the wild caught ones, they're chill. And my captive bred Philippines, if I was trying to feed them with, 14 or 18-inch hemostats, that's too close of my hand to them. But 2 feet, I can literally be standing back, right? Some of my cages are 4 foot front to back. And so they could be on the top perch or shelf 7 feet up. And that distance, I don't know, it just seems to register for them better. And especially for one of my females I have, she's older. And I had found it was kind of tricky to get her to cycle. So being, she's still sort of touchy if I get too close to her. So being able to get her to eat off of tongs like that, that's purely the reason why I have those.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Otherwise,
utility. They're a very useful piece of equipment to have in your repertoire. And if I didn't have my 24-inch hemostats, so I guess that's pair number 6. But if I didn't have those, I would be very sketchy feeding some of these venomous. So I'll say that.
Can't relate there either.
Yeah, I mean, I remember back at the Discovery Center, there were a few pairs of locking hemostats. Mm-hmm. Those are good for surgery. That's it.
Yeah.
For so many reasons, but like, just from a safety standpoint, if you got to drop that rodent and pull back, but like all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, like that split second of hesitation that can cause, especially if you're dealing with dangerous animals, that's a huge consideration. So, I would always try to like get them to close where like the locking parts were like on the opposite mm-hmm. sides, like the smooth sides were like touching each other. I'm like, what is the point of this? I'm not like suturing something up here. So, Yeah, definitely. It kind of seems like a cool idea. Like, oh, I don't have to apply constant pressure or whatever. It's just going to hold. But then if you think about it, with forceps, with tongs, that's really the case. But with hemostats, the action is opening them. Close is kind of the natural state of the hemostat. So if you're holding something heavy, yeah, you're going to have to apply a little bit of pressure. But if it's not really heavy, the minimal amount of pressure is needed to hold that pair closed. Opening it is where you actually need the force. We may have lost everybody by now, but the hemostat talk. But I think it's very important.
We went from reptile tools to a physics lesson.
But if you think about it, an 18-inch pair of hemostats and an 18-inch pair of tongs, where's your hand? You're 18 inches from feeder to hand, and if it's the tongs, you're like halfway choked up that. So you lose like most of that separation that it caused. I don't know. Tongs are good for like catching snakes in the field. That might be the entire list of what those things are good for in herpetoculture, in my opinion.
I can only think
maybe like arachnid work, I guess, because you don't want to apply too much pressure when you're grabbing them.
I never even like tongue feed my spiders.
But like for moving them?
Well, whenever I move them, I try and use like paintbrushes and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Because their hairs are so sensitive. They're actually, they're pretty fragile. So when like say if I have a spider that's too big for its cup, I'm going to rehouse it into a bigger cup or a jar. I'll use hemostats to grab the decor or something in the enclosure so I don't have my fingers in there because I don't want to get bit because the stuff I have is kind of nasty as far as old world spiders and their venom. But they really just use paintbrushes because you want something soft. Some people use feathers, and the idea is typically if it's soft, it prevents them from wanting to bolt. And the last thing you want is a spider where you blink and now you're like, how did it get on the wall? Especially if it's, a 7-inch, ghost ornamental tarantula. That's not fun. So no, they're cool, but that's, gotta give them their respects. And kind of if you just gently, poke, they just slowly crawl and you can get them into a cup, or you get the cup over them and then you slide like a feather or the paintbrush under and then they run up the cup, you cardboard it. But yeah, I never use hemostats to like truly grab them just because they're pretty fragile. You might accidentally like crush a part of the exoskeleton and kill them.
So that's why I thought that people use forceps, because you can control the pressure a lot more with a forceps than with a hemostat.
Oh yeah, maybe. I know like with feeder insects that's fine, but also at the same time, if you're tongue feeding crickets, they're usually not coming back after you pick them up.
Yeah, like for grabbing arachnids and stuff. But
I hadn't heard of that method or not before.
Well, with that said, we are a little past the typical commercial break time, so we're going to hit that real quick. We'll come back with our next topic in Tools of the Trade, and we will see you all in a few minutes.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor brought to you by ZooMed.
ZooMed is proud to be supporting the Trap Talk Reptile Network. At ZooMed, reptiles are our passion. For over 48 years, we've been creating premium foods, supplies, and habitats for reptiles and other exotic animals. We're a company made up of hobbyists that test our products on the hundreds of animals that we care for here every single day. Whether you're an established breeder or a first-time hobbyist picking up your first ball python, ZooMed has you covered with everything you need to keep your animals happy and healthy.
I'm excited to talk about this new product with ZooMed called the Slither Sense. It is a remote temperature and humidifying monitoring system, which we all know how important temperature and humidity is to your reptile. And for you to have remote access to your temperature and your humidity in your reptile room could really, really be a game changer for the longevity of you keeping reptiles. So guys, make sure you check out that product. Find the link in the description below. Click on it right now. Give me your feedback in the comments below. Let me know how you're liking a brand new ZooMed product. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, Workshop Reptilium. Josh Hansen is doing things different over in his facility. He has one of the most diverse, beautiful reptile collections currently in the reptile hobby today, but he is doing things differently when it comes to enclosures, thinking outside the box, giving these reptiles bigger enclosures. I feel like it's something this hobby needs. So a lot of exciting stuff to come from Workshop Reptilium. I'm going to be flying up to his place to give you guys a deeper look into his facility. And I'm also excited to have an episode with Josh so he can explain himself where his goals are headed when it comes to keeping. Thank you so much, Josh Hansen over at Workshop Reptilium. Make sure you head over to Instagram. Make sure you head over to Facebook. Also, make sure you subscribe to him on YouTube. You can find all the links in the description below. Again, thank you so much, Josh, over at Workshop Reptilium. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, and that's the one and only Morph Market and Morph Market shipping. One of the biggest exciting things about the reptile hobby over the past couple years is Morph Market shipping taking everything to the next level. Anything as far as reptile purchasing or selling needs can all be done on Morph Market's website. So I highly suggest you go check it out, especially if you're in the market of purchasing your first, second, or third, or fourth reptile. You can find a bunch of legitimate breeders on Morph Market's platforms. They stand very tall on representing the best breeders we have in the hobby. So don't look anywhere else when it comes to looking for your new reptile. Not to mention, if you're looking for aquatics or your next plant, Morph Market's a spot for you as well. Make sure you head over to morphmarket.com. And the best thing about Morph Market's platform, you could ship directly from their website with Morph Market shipping. Morph Market shipping has saved this hobby millions of dollars as a whole. I myself saved thousands with Morph Market shipping last year due to their insanely cheap rates. So definitely go take advantage of these rates on top of the amazing customer service that comes along with Morph Market shipping. Shout out to Darian and Zach, and shout out to the entire Morph Market team. So proud to be a part of this team. Thank you so much for Morph Market shipping and Morph Market, and so excited to announce new Morph Market features that are going to be hitting the reptile hobby real soon, like live sales on Morph Market. Thank you so much, Morph Market and Morph Market shipping.
Alrighty, everybody, we are back. So, Alex, what is next on the agenda?
I was thinking, at least for me, I did rearrange my room a little bit, just trying to make room for some holdbacks I held last year. And, something that I have had to think about with the way my room works, whereas like external, internal walls are, and that's just cage placement. And I think we could probably relate to this as, you probably more than I can. It's just, when you have a little bit of a diverse collection, slipping on my tongue there, that sort of figuring out the best spots in a room or even like within a building that you're going to maximize that room's area for the respective species, right? So like, for example, my sailfins really like it warm and often warmer than the water dragons. And so they're typically on like my inside walls, and then my outside wall, I have an aisle coming off of that where I can also crack the window in the lizard room to let cooler air come in at night, especially in the summer. And so just, I don't know, insights on, where you keep your enclosures and why. I know I started off the last one on the hemostat, so I'll let you go, and then I can sort of share what I've done.
Yeah, so for me at this point, I'm running all of my rooms on ambient. The rattlesnake room they all have basking spots, like mini halogen basking spots, but the ambient of the room is also very important. So, I'm managing that as well. I would say at this point for me, I don't really have quite as many cages that I place in particular places or parts of the room for the sake of temperature or whatnot. Really much more just for how well the room flows. I don't like deep enclosures, so I prefer 2 foot deep enclosures. I don't like 3 foot deep enclosures. I don't like having to reach all the way back to spot clean and stuff, and people have given me shit for that. I don't care. I don't want to do it. I have some 30-inch deep enclosures, and that's pretty much as far as I'll go. So for that reason, when designing a room, you kind of have to consider, all right, how much are you eating into that internal space of your room? And the structures, so to speak, that take up that the most depth for me are some racks. So like to my left here, I have my ARS and Freedom Breeder racks, and they're like 32, 34 inches deep. Mm-hmm. So that takes a lot more space from the interior of the room, but then also from kind of either wall next to it if you're going to be meeting in the corner. So, you know, how much are you willing to sacrifice in those directions? So when it comes to that, you know, kind of measuring rooms, making little diagrams, and then also, like, for instance, if I'm entering a room, I'm probably not going to have that rack right at the beginning where it kind of like eliminates space right there. If it's more towards the opposite side of the room where you kind of like build out from the wall, it just makes the room kind of flow a little better, I feel like. Or you can also kind of create a wall by having the rack there as well. So the inverse also works. Where for me with the cages, they're 2 feet deep. So it's not quite as much of a concern. Like in my my adult scrub room, I'm working on a universal depth throughout the entire room. So it makes it very easy to organize that because I'm not having to deal with anything coming further out from the wall than the cage next to it or the cage that it's butting up to in the corner. You lose a lot less square footage that way. So I guess designing from scratch, and if you're picking enclosures, definitely would recommend doing that, having kind of a universal depth to it. If you're doing like a room with racks, maybe instead of having everything hit in the corners, having entire walls where they go wall to wall and doing like rows instead, because you might actually utilize more space that way instead of kind of making like having all of that dead space in a corner of like this kind of like 3 by 3 square in a corner. That's just totally dead space. Depending on the dimensions of your room, you might actually lose more space doing it that way. Where with cages that are only 2 feet deep, chances are you're going to be maximizing space by only giving up that 2 foot corner. So stuff like that. I mean, shoot, I know you've done the same, man. I have designed so many reptile rooms in my time that, a lot of this is just kind of like second nature to me, but there's a lot to consider when it comes to designing a space, especially if you're trying to really maximize the amount of enclosures, racks, et cetera, that you can actually fit into said area.
What you said earlier about like maximizing space, that was the biggest problem I had when I was setting up my room from scratch. Is I had this idea of like having a circle of rooms and then a bunch of open space, and then I was going to be stuck with the dead space. And so that's where I ended up, especially now with the holdbacks, I sort of reset my room to some extent, and now I have just aisles, and I filled that room to the brink, just because I don't need to pull a lizard out to work with the enclosure. I kind of just walk by and close it down. So I do have like an area where a table is, so I can work on there, like if I have to sort bugs or prep salad or something. But otherwise, it's just wall to wall, and then there's like the middle wall, and that's just my deepest section of enclosures. And so that just comes straight out. So it's like two 16-foot aisles in a sense. Or two aisles, 3 rows, and then 2 outer, or the 2, I guess what's it called, there's the west facing wall, so the north and the south wall are just rows of those grow tents. And it was a learning curve at first, because I won't lie, I look back at like my original floor plan, and it was just this really terrible, it's a miracle like I actually got stuff done, because man, as soon as I switched to the aisles, it's just, you go from one to the other, and it's a nice real streamline form of caring for the lizards in that case, and then fitting my holdbacks in. But then the other thing that I thought about was, with how warm my room gets, last year when it had gotten to 90, I was having issues where I felt bad, but it was also kind of funny. The water dragons, they didn't like it when it got that hot, and they were on an interior wall, right? And so because of that, their cages just maintained that heat so much longer. And I remember there was one day I walked in, they were all just sitting on the floor, and a couple of them on the lower branches. They did not like it. Yeah. And since then, I've made it where the ends of my aisles that are connected to the outside wall, I believe I said it earlier, I can just crack the window open and let cool air in if I want. So they're the first cages to be hit by that air exchange.
Okay.
So it's kind of nice that I can keep the, heat lovers, the sail fins, further in, and then the water dragon groups are on the end of those aisles. So it's just something that I thought about, which honestly, from what I was complaining at the start about them breeding too much, maybe that's why they're happier and breeding even more, is that they're a little bit more cool. You know, there's some temperature overlap, but you know, if it's a 92-degree day for the sailfins, they love it. It's 92 for the water dragons. That's a bit hot. And, you know, the sweet spot would be like 86 to 88 all the time. But I do think there's some merit to, you know, what you were saying. You keep pretty much most of your stuff ambient. I really like just letting the room ride through the seasons. You know, there's some days in the winter where my ambient temp is only 74 in that room. So then the grow tents, you know, they trap heat pretty well. So that's more, you know, 82. But, you know, like I temped on my baby nursery today and it was 96 in there, and there were sailfins still basking. So, yeah.
Damn.
And then I had to walk into that grow tent and clean tubs with the 80% humidity in there. So it's how it's done. I was sweating, but yeah, I guess sort of the point is, you know, it was something I hadn't thought about until I had seen the water dragons last year not liking that higher ambient heat. And so by moving them to somewhere where it can cool off, or even relatively is going to, like in the winter, it's even cooler for them, which I think is great because that lets them cycle better. Whereas the sailfins, they're more equatorial. I don't mind if they're in the warmer parts of the room. And so that was something I was sort of curious on your end is, granted, it sounds like most of the stuff you have, you can just keep the same throughout that room. I didn't know if there were like certain, I don't know, scrubs or like maybe your olives where you intentionally had them on an outside wall because you knew that was where then.
I mean, I kind of for those in particular, I kind of wish I could. You know, there's a difference for me between like the first floor of my house and the second floor of my house, of course. The only thing I will say that I spaced on that, you know, make a very good point. In my scrub room / converted garage, basically every stack of cages is 3 high. I have 2 stacks of 8x2x3s. Those are only 2 high, but you know, they're all 3 high. The bottom level of cages, all males. The middle and top, all females. So very important, actually. For a handful of reasons. One, you know, I don't want the females to get that cool when it's in, you know, winter time. There's just no reason for them to get into the mid 60s like those male cages will. And you know, when a female is gravid or whatnot, you know, when she's in that her lay box, it's right above sometimes they're on heat panel in the cage below, but even if the panel in the cage below isn't on, it's not right on the ground. So if that female was in that cage on the ground, even like, let's say right now, if a female was getting ready to lay, the basking spot might be 88, 90 degrees, but then down in the nest in the bottom cage might be like 74, which is not what you want. Where in the middle level or at the top level, they're probably going to be sitting at like 82 to 84, maybe even 85 during the peak of the day. Probably not though. In the box, you know, much more advantageous setup for that female there. And then for spermatogenesis, obviously the males getting cool is important for developing healthy sperm. So them being in those bottom enclosures definitely, you know, plays quite the role. With that said though, during breeding season, I mean, when the females are going, the males are rarely ever in their enclosures. So that's, you know, something there. I have another room that I have some cages that are on the ground, and those are all males. I actually have a problem where I have 3 cages in particular that'll get like colder than I'd like them to in the winter. So I got to figure something out for heating those properly. During the summer, they're fine, but during the winter they get too cold. But I like to keep males in there that I know I'm going to be moving around, so they'll be in that cage for like a day or 2 when I'm feeding the female. Then they're right back in with her. So yeah, I do that. I should have thought of saying that earlier, but I'm glad I'm saying it now. So yeah, very, very intentional about having the males on the ground, the females in the middle level and the top level. And then in my rattlesnake room, particularly with my ridge-nosed rattlesnakes, I always have them on the bottom level if I can. I have one that's in the middle level, but it's right across from the air conditioner, so it gets a little bit more of a direct hit of the cool. They just do better at a little bit of a cooler temperature than the rest of them do, where especially it seems like for gravid females, getting a little cooler than other species seems to bode well for healthy litters and, you know, females passing all the babies properly, etc. So I do that. Not quite as specific with having males lower in that room, but mostly considering I have them cohabbed year round. So that's kind of going to be where they are. But then unlike pythons where, you know, a female could run into issues getting too cold, it's hard to get those snakes too cold, especially for me. They're on the second floor of my house. So getting them cold enough in the winter is actually my concern. Getting them too cold has never once been something that I even had to consider in this house.
Yeah, I was worried about things getting too cold for me, and yet just up here, everything's built for the cold months. So usually the summer is what always worries me about things getting too hot. Just because, I mean, I worry sometimes, you know, what happens if that room could hit 100 degrees. My mentor with Sailfins, Mr. Scott Korner, he had told me when he had a separate lizard building at one of his first properties, he had a hot building and he had the temperate building. And he said he had frilled lizards and sailfins basking one time when his AC went out and the building ambient was 105. Everything was fine. But I just, you know, mostly with the water dragons, and like I said, I try to shoot for that sweet spot of anywhere from 82 to 90, you know. Yeah. The breeding season, if you will, is what I strive for. But specifically with the water dragons, I do wonder if they got a little too hot last year, which could explain why, you know, I'm now getting even more clutches, as I said. Yeah. So just, room placement, something to think about, especially with a diverse collection. And it sounds like with the stuff you're keeping, ambient's pretty much the way to go. That's how I do it with my colubrids, the corn snakes I've had forever. They just stay in my living room, and they go anywhere from 72 to 78 year round. And I know it sounds crazy, but they've got LEDs in those display cages though. So I found even those like 8-watt LEDs, because it's black PVC.
Yeah, have a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird. Like I can temp gun the top of their like hide boxes, and it'll be like 78. So then summer 82.
Yeah, you know, and that's kind of the same for me. Like my living room essentially is like, it's where I have like my tiger rats and, you know, stuff like that. During the summertime, like that, you know, that area will reasonably get like about 80 degrees during the day. I have my colubrid incubator in that area, so I don't let it really get a whole lot warmer than that. That incubator, it's not much of an incubator more than as just a contained space, because once it gets warm, the heat just does not turn on in that unit at any point in time. But I let it drop a little bit at night, like to get it down to like 78 at night in the colubrid incubator. And they'll get a little bit cooler at night, you know, probably in the peak summer, maybe down to like 77.
That's fine.
Like right now though, in the morning, I'll go down and it'll be like 74, 75. So I think, you know, pretty solid, and kind of similar deal with the room that I'm in right now. This room is a mixture of pythons and colubrids, but like the rack that I have my raise up scrubs in, I have a couple colubrids in there right now, but it's almost all scrubs. I do have heat on that rack. And then the rack next to it is where I have a lot of my adult or subadult colubrids, and there's no heat in that rack at all. So, you know, rides the wave of the temperature pretty well up here as well. Similar dynamics to my living room, except it'll get a little cooler up here. And honestly, that's mostly because when it gets hot, I got to turn my AC down a little bit to be able to fall asleep at night. So that's for selfish reasons. So that is that.
Room design for it. Yeah. I don't know. Just something to play. It's like, I wish I I guess like more experience in the snake realm, because I know that's where most of your listeners are. The previous breeding facility I managed, I mean, it was a big warehouse. So the whole thing was kept 75, right? Because it's just those HVAC units are huge. So,
Yeah.
and, we had 3 big circulating fans that it just like honestly, it didn't matter where we had things because the temperature was so such a large volume of air. Other than I guess there was like one area that was surrounded by 3 outside walls. It was like a little alcove, and that's where I kept this. Like that's where I kept most of the pythons and at the time the indigo snakes, because that was the stuff where it didn't hibernate. So I wanted it to experience a little bit more of this temperature fluctuation.
Yeah.
I guess then that's where I would have put those. But otherwise, I'm a lizard nut man, and I guess my corn snakes in a little bit room.
It makes for a good dynamic, because I've always said that there's a lot to be learned from other sectors of herpetoculture. Obviously not necessarily directly, you're talking about feeding insects and whatnot, like you can't really relate that to snakes, but at least from like a mindset standpoint, different observations, just different way of thinking about things. I think there's a lot to be learned from studying aspects of herpetoculture that you are not involved in. I mean, those classic videos about lace monitor breeding, croc dog,
David Kirshner's video. Yeah.
Australia, like that's the single best piece of information on the internet about the follicular development ovulation process of reptiles, because it's the same in snakes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just explained in lizards and in the most clear terms with visual aids that has ever been put together. So when I watched that series, obviously I was trying to learn about lace monitors because that's back when I was working with them, but also I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense, because now everything that I've been trying to think about with the snakes makes clear sense, because this is the exact same process. So we got Panda's phone.
The other one.
And yeah, he couldn't show up to the last episode, but he can show up in the comment section of this one. So he saw Alex was on the show and thought maybe he had to be on this one too.
Wait, was I scheduled for that?
But yeah, anything else on this subject before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is just sort of, in my case, right? So with my spare bedroom here, it I don't have a direct AC unit there. And so like something that I've really thought about, and maybe you can compare on this, is so when I moved here, how much more, I guess, stable my humidity is than when I was living at my parents'. Because I was keeping reptiles in my bedroom. Man, the heat directly connected there in the summer or in the winter, and the AC having an output there, I was constantly fighting dry air, trying to keep humid species. And yet now, since I have a wall mounted AC unit, it it cools different rooms, right? Or the other one's got a wall mounted AC unit, but like the reptile room doesn't have that. And so because of that, something that I've also had to factor into the room is I have a lot of circulating fans, because I don't want stagnant moisture escaping and causing issues on the drywall. But then at the same time, I have also had to tell myself to not spray as heavily. Or sometimes I just miss the lizards to get them to drink, and I don't even have to spray the enclosure because there's nothing that's drying out the air in that room. And so often what I found is my enclosures just hold humidity a lot better. And that's something that I've never, ever had to deal with in a reptile room before, because I have always had to fight dry conditions. Growing up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, you were in Chicago, the city, like, it's just dry there. And, if houses there, right, you've got central air units. So that was sort of another thing, just, with my current living situation, the AC is done by wall mounted units. And so that one bedroom, the spare room just doesn't have that because it's meant to be a spare. And so something where maybe, I'm trying to think, I know there's some places up north that don't even have AC units, like further north in Ely, Minnesota. But I'm trying to think, maybe like places in the South where you don't have heat, but I mean, I guess you'd have AC. So, just learning how to, I guess, not only deal with the temperature aspect in placement of the cages, but just how the moisture in your room is going to work. Because I remember, like, it was shortly after I moved up here, I had one water dragon that was starting to get like blisters on her tail because it was like too damp. Because I was still spraying closures down.
Yeah,
like I did when I was in Illinois. Because that room had heat and HVAC directly in it that would dry out the air and thus dry out the cages faster. So
yeah,
just one other thing that's just come to my mind. So
yeah, I mean it's super important, and then obviously the enclosures themselves are a very major factor. Do your grow tents have vents on them, or are they do? Yeah,
that was the other thing I had to fight. Is it's sort of a common thing of reduce ventilation to trap humidity, but man, especially for some of the like stagnant
the water features and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then you do not want that. So
yeah,
I have almost every vent, like the side floor vents, open, and then they've got like small side vents where you could run ductwork. But then what I do is this might sound kind of cheap, but like for a period of time, what I did is I took fly screen and PVC like 4-inch couplings, and I jam them together so the fly screen is there, and then I can put those on the side and adjust like it's like a seal strap in a sense, and I can adjust the amount of ventilation around that hole. Mm-hmm. So the idea is you want cross ventilation in those grow tents because they're so good at holding humidity, but you don't want stagnant. And so it was something where I had to tweak each individual setup, right? Because I do have heat, because in the winter it does get really cold up here. So the winter is the only time of year I fight dryness, but even then, if I shut that door, just the amount of residual humidity that escapes the cage, my room still stays 45-50% in the winter. Whereas, I remember, and I have photos when I was living at my parents', when our heat was on in the house, there were times my bedroom was 19% humidity. It was so dry. It probably gets that low in my living areas because I don't have any animals out here.
Right.
But definitely having to play around with ventilation, because if you cut off all the vents in those grow tents, I just feel like long term that's not going to be good for the animals. And I kind of like making sure I have those vents because for now spring and summer, when I can leave the screen window open all night, when it's, even if it's 68, the residual heat in the room will let the room drop down to like 75, which is fine. But just letting that fresh air in and letting that exchange with the grow tents and the lizards breathing in, I'd like to think that's good for them. And then at the same time, since the outside air, it's not, it's not heated and it's not air conditioned, so my humidity actually stays pretty consistent even with that air exchange.
Yeah, that's very good. I guess the one thing that I'll say as far as an actual tool of the trade for this, I don't have that luxury of, lizard enclosures and water features, but, this isn't anything that people don't know about, but I, for some reason, didn't find out about it until this year. But the evaporative humidifier, what a lifesaver. Oh my gosh. As opposed to just a regular cool mist or warm mist humidifier where the water absorbs into a filter first, and then the clear steam dissipates. So where you're not getting that like white sediment film all over everything from the regular humidifier. Definitely a massive benefit there. I'll never go back to using a regular humidifier again. I mean, you can use regular humidifiers if you're putting like distilled water through it, but then obviously you need to go about distilling or sourcing distilled water. So the evaporative humidifier, it's not even like it's that much more expensive than a regular humidifier. The issue is just then getting replacement filters every so often. Or you could have done like me and bought an evaporative humidifier off of Amazon, not checking if they even made replacement filters, which they don't. So now I need to get a new humidifier for like the 7th time in this fucking house. So that's cool. But to Just don't get that one. Don't get the one that I got on it. I don't think they sell them anymore. It's with some like Chinese product, but MJ's made videos about the ones that he has. I need to ask him what it is again, but he has these really nice ones that have replacement filters, and there's this like kind of solution you can put in them to keep the units clean, keep the water clean. So yeah, definitely evaporative humidifier. Way to go there.
Okay, good stuff.
Yep. Alrighty. What are we on to now, Sir Alex?
Figured, honestly, last but not least, just because this is something that I've probably talked about it with a couple previous episodes, but since we're going into the next breeding season, and this is something that I feel like everyone just wants to hear different insights on, let's revisit incubation. If I'm not mistaken, you have a brand spanking new incubator.
I do. Kush Reptile on YouTube for the setting up video of my new Sea Serpents 48-inch incubator. Thank you, Alex. Alley-oop.
Yeah, I am. Just incubator model, as you said. How you're doing, the eggs in that incubator versus, especially in your case with more of a diverse collection. Colubrid incubation versus python incubation. Sploides versus Pituophis even. And I said I've sort of been playing around with some stuff using different incubation mediums. In my case with temperature far from stable, which I can go into some stuff. But just sort of like, honestly, just even then, since this is a tools of the trade episode, like what's the equipment you're using? Thermostats, egg boxes, incubation media.
Yes,
where do you source it? How do you disinfect your egg boxes? So that way they're ready to go for, next season, or in this case, this season.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I'll hand it off to you first.
Alrighty. So, as far as the incubator itself goes, I really like this Sea Serpents incubator, but of course, a lot of things can become an incubator. So you don't necessarily need to get a commercial incubator. I did because I just wanted to be very certain I'm getting a good product to put my very valuable eggs in. I also like the design. It very well fits with like the rest of my house. I like the big window in the front, the lights, it's a good looking unit. So I'm at this point, I'm pretty much only using sim containers if I can get away with it. I've used a lot of different containers for incubation over the years, and they work, but like overall I've just had the best success with sim containers. I like them for lots of reasons. So if there was a perfect setup for incubation, we would have come up with it by now. There's just no perfect way. Before I get into that though, running on a herpstat, and we've talked about herpstats on here before. There's no comparable thermostat.
There isn't.
There just is not a comparable thermostat to a herpstat. So, simple. No discussion to be had there. If you really are taking this seriously, herpstats are where it's at. So, got the herpstat on the Sea Serpents. And then for the incubation medium this year, I did like a 50-50 vermiculite perlite mixture last year. And I felt at times that it was a little bit too saturated. So I went back to 2/3 perlite to 1/3 vermiculite, because the vermiculite is going to hold a lot more moisture than the perlite will for a longer period of time. And then last year I didn't use the grates, the inserts for the sim containers. This year I am, but I'm packing the bedding up there. So where I put the grates down and they kind of like pack the bedding down a little bit with it, creating just that like very minor gap between the eggs and the substrate, but not so much where there's like air exchange underneath and the eggs can kind of start to dry, desiccate from underneath, which you will get with suspended incubation, at least in my experience, especially with water crystals. Definitely suspended is not my favorite. Like suspended over water or water crystals, not my favorite method of incubation. And like we've mentioned in past episodes, I like to do the water basin in the incubator and then ventilation holes in the egg boxes themselves. Man, this incubator, I have a thermometer in there. In the main chamber is 99% humidity constantly. If I open it up for a little while, it's back to 99% within the hour. So it's holding humidity very well. But then I only have to really wipe the lids down like once a week. And it's like not even full condensation where like I'd be worried about a drop of water falling off. It's just kind of like that little kind of cloudiness starting to form. So a couple pieces of paper towel take care of that issue. So far so good this year, without going into too much detail. But been liking it so far. And then last year, instead of the grates, I used some dry sphagnum from the nest boxes to kind of create a barrier. And I'm still using that this year, but kind of pack the clutch in a little bit. If there's anywhere where like a particular egg has too much pressure on it, pack in some sphagnum so that it kind of distributes the weight a little bit more evenly. Because in the past, I feel like I've had eggs that I don't want to say went bad from this, but went bad and had this happen where I felt like there was too much pressure on them from top and the bottom, where they were sitting on like light diffuser board or something like that, and they were under a stack. So now it's not, obviously like there's going to be that top down weight, but if it's being supported by the substrate, it's going to kind of disperse it a little bit. But if it's being supported by this very hard, kind of almost sharp in a way plastic, like pushing into the egg, then I feel like that has led to eggs either going bad. I've even had in one clutch where the shells weren't fantastic. I've actually had a couple of eggs pop, which was wild. So colubrid eggs, pines, so not python eggs. But either way, definitely something where I saw that I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep that in mind forever because that's crazy. So that's that. The colubrid incubators is pretty much the same. The only difference is just the heat. That this new incubator is exclusively for scrub python, so I can do it to the exact specifications of scrub python incubation. And then the colubrid one's much more general. I think I have the heat set at like 78.5 during the day. It's going to get warmer than that 100%. But then at least it allows it to drop back down at night. Colubrid eggs, you could say they benefit from a fluctuation potentially, but they definitely benefit from being on the cooler end of their temperature ranges, temp sex determinant species or not. The kind of low and slow with colubrids overall seems to be better. Obviously, if your eggs need to be 78 to 82, you have them at 72. Okay, you're going to run into problems. Like, don't take it to beyond its logical extreme, but within the given range, I like to err on the lower side. It might take a little while longer to hatch, but you're going to get bigger, more robust babies. Less issues of kinks or poor development, whatnot. So for that reason alone, I'd have no problem waiting a little longer on the colubrids. But I do have the water basin in there as well, but I don't feel the need to keep that humidity 99% like with the pythons. Actually, I think that would be bad. So it fluctuates in there. It'll get up to like 80% humidity, get back down to like 60% humidity. I'm pretty much fine with that.
Nice. Yeah, I always wondered if there's like a relationship, and I mean I'll go into some of my thoughts on this with how things have been going with clutches I've hatched this year and clutches I hatched last year, between sort of the increased like temperature and then the relative humidity. So like, for example, because like colubrid people, man, like some of the old school guys, they just take the eggs, they're like, oh, there they are on the vermiculite. I didn't even weigh the water. And then they just throw them on top of a shelf. And they'll hatch, right? I think about like the zircles, right? Talking about like people who've been doing it forever that way. And you're like, what temperature does he incubate the eggs at? And Rob has straight up said, I don't know, just fluctuates. They hatch when they hatch, you know? And those were often cooler temperatures. But it's like if you had, you know, and I've had this happen with water dragon eggs where I put them in an incubator that didn't have that water basin in there, and moisture just got sucked out with how dry it was in there.
Yeah.
And so to some extent, it's like, is there a threshold of moisture absorption based on the metabolic rate of the egg? You know, I'd like to think so, because like if reptiles are cold-blooded, right, an egg at cooler temperatures is going to develop slower. I mean, that's why they hatch longer. And so maybe it's not drawing in as much moisture. Whereas say like scrub eggs, what are you incubating at? Like 86.5, 87?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a lot higher than 77. So by having 100% humidity, also I guess factoring in that it's, you know, a tropical snake, but the egg's metabolic rate is going to be higher than a colubrid egg at 78, where I don't know, density of water vapor is not as crucial for an egg operating at cooler temperatures versus higher temperatures. But I
result in some overhydration or mold or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had that happen with some eggs at my former job. I believe I said like the eggs were swelling because they were too wet. You consulted a buddy to suspend them. But in my case, so my incubator is the same as last year, at least one of them. I have the size down, 36-inch sea serpents. Set up the same, Herbstat 1, 6-quart tub of water. The one thing I'm changing differently is I've dropped my incubator a degree. So I had it at 83 last year. I'm dropping it to 82. The only reason why is because my first few clutches of sailfin eggs, they went 90 days. Nice, big, healthy babies. And then something I had noticed with my later clutches is, so the way I incubate the eggs, it's literally just a salad container. Nothing fancy. I'm going to fully admit my incubation method is trash. Like old plastic containers, that's what I use.
Hey,
so
if it hatched, then it works.
Yeah, I'm not fancy. And what I ended up doing is I use the fine grade vermiculite, almost like sand. And then I incubate the eggs relatively dry, but they're fully buried. And maybe I've said this on previous episodes. The best way I can describe it, I like my vermiculite to feel like if you've ever been to the beach and you start to sink your toes in the sand, where it's instantly cooler, but it doesn't clump as if you were to do it the 1-to-1 way. Does that make sense? Like the 1-to-1 water vermiculite way. But it feels damp. And so then the eggs are fully buried that way. But because of that, I am they can just, they're in a sense surrounded by humidity, but they're still dry under the substrate, and then they're in a chamber that's 99% humidity.
Yeah.
And so the only reason why I'm dropping the temperature is because some of the eggs in my clutches that were 4 or 5, they hatched at like 86 days instead of 90. And I noticed those babies were slightly smaller. And so I'm wondering if the eggs releasing heat at the end of incubation obviously sped it up a little bit, but even though it was a 4-day window, it was just kind of noticeable. So I feel like maybe if I drop it a degree, so I'm still within, right? I just did 83 because my mentor, he does 82 to 84 with a night drop. And he said, if you're going to do a constant temp, do it in the middle. And I've done that. This is just sort of what I've seen. And I've had some days where my apartment just gets so hot that like sometimes that incubator is still bumped up anyways, right?
Yeah.
And so then I could just, if I have it already at a cool setting, then it means on those days when it rises up, it's not going to ideally go up as much as if I had it at 83.
Sure.
So
that's interesting to see how that goes. See how your results differ. Because 1 degree makes a huge difference at times with reptile incubation. Like you might think, 1 degree, what can it do? Well, sometimes not a lot, but sometimes it could make or break a situation.
Hopefully I don't break it. That would suck if I kill.
Well, you're going down. If you told me you were going to 84 now, I'd be like, well, all right, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not. I know I know of people who've incubated them that high. I have a lizard that was incubated that high. They never do. They hatch out tiny, and usually they have piss poor attitudes. And I've got one that is absolutely terrible. She is the worst.
Nice.
The only reason I have her is because of her genetic value, in my opinion. But as soon if her bloodline was everywhere, she'd be getting out of here. But she's one of two of the country, to my knowledge. So she kind of has to stay. So that's with the sail fins. And normally I would say I would have water dragons in that same incubator. The problem I had last year is I had so many sail fin clutches that, it's just a 3-foot incubator. And so it fits, pretty much these salad containers are about the size of a 6-quart tub, 2 per shelf. And so I ran out of room.
That's my friend.
Yeah, I need a better incubator. But I since decided to try an experiment that has worked well, and I've just been throwing water dragon eggs in the closet in my reptile room. And quite literally, I have had them get as high as 89 for a couple hours, and in the same period drop down to 74.
Dang.
Yeah, and they hatch. On average, it's anywhere from a high of 86 to a low of 78. But those, I have a little sensor, like those extremes have been recorded. And so what I found is on average, I've hatched 4 clutches in there now, and it's about 76 days. And then my clutches that were laid in peak, January, when it was still winter here, that clutch that just hatched was at 81 days. And so the babies are huge. The only con I had with that, and this is something I had to change, is I had a couple of clutches that hatched in January, and they looked big and healthy at first. But after about 3 weeks, I lost 1, and then 2, and then 3 babies, 4. And there were some clutches that just every single hatchling passed away.
Jeez.
And so originally, I want to say it was an episode on not MJ show, but on the network when Mike Stefani and Jin were doing the monitor talk, and now it's done by Catherine and Brandon. But they had interviewed a guy named Matt Kossman, who had said something about perlite or water crystals causing issues. They had a fungicide or something. Oh. And so I had thought that because I was incubating some of these eggs on perlite, but I had a clutch that hatched in my incubator, and they were perfectly fine, and they were on perlite. I was sort of experimenting the time difference. So I was like, okay, is it the perlite? And then I had another clutch that hatched, again, in the closet on perlite, and I had the same problem. I just lost every single one of those babies. It was really heartbreaking, and I sat out and I thought about it. And now this clutch that I hatched recently, also on perlite, but they're rocking. And they are nowhere near as showing the off signs that the other ones were starting to show at the same age. And so what I think happened, again, this is just a hypothesis here, because of the way those acted, I wondered if 89 was too hot, even for that couple hour period.
Yeah. And
so I took all of the eggs that were on the shelf of this closet in the reptile room, and now they're on the floor. So now if the room's 89, right, the shelf was 89 because it's about, chest level with me.
Okay.
If the room's 89, the eggs are 85, 86. Yeah. If the room, and at night it still stays pretty stable. But I'm wondering if, for the case of these Chinese water dragons, even though they were having a good daytime high and a nighttime low, if that thermal peak was just too much, especially at the end of incubation when the eggs release heat.
Yeah.
So I'm not really changing up, I guess, perlite, vermiculite. I'm planning on eventually switching all of them for vermiculite. I'm just waiting for these clutches to hatch that had the rest of my perlite, but I've just always used straight vermiculite through and through with most of the lizard eggs. I just, again, was trying something. And I do have a couple in a Sims in the closet. Same method as you've done, where I filled it all the way to the grid with vermiculite. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. The one thing that I will say is that because of how my reptile, like the closet area, is not like it's not humid. So I had also experimented with the only ventilation ports I have are just 2 tiny pin pricks with like a push pin on the plastic container. And I think that ties in well with my incubation idea where the eggs are fully buried, but it's dry. So the air exchange is so slow and steady that I wonder if that contributes to the temperature swings, right? Because in a sense, lizards bury their eggs in the ground. Again, if I really could figure it out, I need to maybe buy one of those, like Amazon's got to have them, like a digital thermometer with a probe that I could bury with the eggs. So I could compare, like, okay, my room's this temp, what temp are the eggs? And maybe then I could get better data on that. So it's working. Selfishly, I kind of like that the eggs are taking longer to hatch because that's less babies I have to deal with all at once. You know, it's fun getting eggs, but I'll fully admit last year when I had that like 8 months of back-to-back hatching of sailfins, you know, Thanksgiving came and we couldn't really ship anymore. And you're like, oh, it's okay. I sold most of them. And then a clutch hatches at Thanksgiving. And a clutch hatches before Christmas and New Year's. And you still can't ship. And now you just went from like 4 sailfins to like 18. Oh, and there were 2 clutches that hatched in February. It piled up on me. Whereas, you know, sort of letting things just.
That's awful. I feel so bad for you.
I know. You know, I understand I wanted that. I just didn't want it that soon, okay? I was happy after the first 4 clutches. But I'll take 9. I will. But between you and me, I'm kind of hoping that maybe it's a little bit less. I still want to produce them this year because then I could produce unrelated to last year's stock. But I'm getting long-winded here. But overall, as far as incubation, I think it's, you know, in theory, this could be a really good way to just produce giant, healthy baby water ants because they hatch out huge when they take this long to hatch. I'm not having any tail kinks. I'm not seeing anything that is typically associated with a very high incubation temperature. So I think the real thing that I have to wait on is whether or not, you know, praying, you know, that this recent clutch of closet babies isn't going to hatch dead next or drop dead next week like the other ones did. Because it was really fast. The ones that hatched in the incubator, they were all great, right? That was a steady 83 last year. But it was just those first 2 clutches that hatched in the closet. And then once I moved stuff to the floor, I had the other one hatch and they did great. And then I've got this one now. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I feel bad that I lost those lizards, but gotta learn something. You know,
it's animal breeding for you. It's not always perfect.
Yeah. So I'll wait and see what happens. The other thing I had factored in is that one of the females, well, actually the female to those clutches, she had a clutch that I almost suspected was like a Partho hatch last year because she had like 15 slugs and 1 good egg. So, but then, you know, the fact that suddenly all of those babies passed away, which I doubt she had 15 Partho babies, but part of me wonders, like, you know, that female, the next clutch of eggs due to hatch is once again from this female. Okay. So I'm wondering maybe it's something with her. And I mean, if that's the case, the person I got her from, I'm just going to, you know, see if they want to keep her as a pet. Because if she's got something genetic that's just producing weak babies, that bloodline should not be passed on for future generations of captive water dragons. But that's like I said, other than the ventilation thing, I bury the lizard eggs and one of them is subject to extreme temperatures and they're doing great, and the other ones I'm still keeping steady. Cool. Ideally, I'd like to get to a point where I could do a night drop on the sailfins just because I'm sure that there's benefits there. That's what my mentors have told me. But at the same time, it's one of those where I want to know that I can produce them a little bit consistently before I start experimenting with sailfin eggs.
I understand.
It's a trade-off. So, yeah.
Hey, that's why I haven't maternally incubated a scrub clutch yet. That exact thought process. So, one of these years, but Probably not this year. So,
Good stuff, man.
yeah. Well, we're right about that 2-hour mark. Do you want to hit a quick one, or do you want to call it a night?
I'm not gonna lie, I gotta get up for work tomorrow. I hate to cut things short, but
Oh,
if you want, what I can do is
we're at 2 hours. This is not
okay.
short.
Well, I can always brainstorm a tool. I mean, there's oh man, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, man, we could have gone into substrates, cage lighting, how you I remember I think on the last one we talked about how we run our electrical,
Yeah.
there's definitely going to be a volume 3 in the future. I have a gut feeling about that. As long as you'll allow it. It's your show.
I love it. All right. Well, I mean, man, I can't imagine anybody not knowing yet, but for anyone who doesn't know, how can they find you? What are the best ways to follow you, get a hold of you, inquire about available animals?
Alex Zagamids. One word, just Instagram, Facebook, Fauna Classifieds, and Morph Market. And
Cool.
The Morph Market store is up to date, as in there's currently nothing available. Sadly, I am sold out for the year. But other than these water dragons, I'm waiting. That'll hopefully be ready in a couple weeks. As I said, though, I kind of want to hold on to them to see how they do, given the closet experiment. But these are giving me a much more they've just got that boost to them, and they're already getting huge. So I'm pretty happy.
Nice.
But yeah, stay tuned for updates, and I try to post to the social pages when I've got stuff hatching, and you can always catch me sometimes co-hosting here, being a guest on Kush's Corner on the Trap Talk Reptile Network.
Absolutely. All right. Well, dude, thank you once again for being here tonight. This was an awesome conversation. And as you said, volume 3 is definitely in order. I thought we were going to get through a whole lot more tonight than we did, but that means we went in depth on the topics that we did talk about, which is always good. So that's all good stuff, man. Well, Alex, thank you again for being here. And thank you to everybody who watched and or listened. And I'll catch you all back here next week for a new episode.